Okay, we are back. I'm very happy to have on the Goldstein on Gelt show Katya Barry, who is an international business coach, and she's speaking to us from Germany. How are you doing, Katya?
I'm very well, thank you, Douglas. It's a pleasure to be featured on your show.
So tell me, you're an international business coach. What does that mean?
Haha, very good question. Well, I suppose, the business coaches that you come about everywhere you go, right? Whether online or offline. And those are the people who help entrepreneurs and small business owners to set up and run their businesses. Well, I do pretty much that, but I take into consideration the international aspect of things. And I suppose my background is very international. I'm Russian. I have lived in the UK. I now live in Germany. My husband is Irish. Together we have two trilingual kids. And on a daily basis, I mix in an international environment. So when I started working as a coach, I realized that there was a serious lack in the international aspect of things. And I see many small business owners and entrepreneurs reaching to overseas markets, wanting to expand. However, many don't realize the certain issues and boundaries that come across their ways, and sometimes challenges as well. And I thought, well, this is great. This is what I know about. This is how I live my life. What could be, or who could be the better person to tell the world about international business, and how to take your business internationally, how to expand your business internationally, how to find foreign clients, how to deal with interesting, fortunate, and challenging, and sometimes funny international circumstances when it comes to business. So that's how I started.
Okay, so what are some of the issues that an international entrepreneur would have as opposed to, let's say, someone who is staying in his own country?
Mm-hmm. Well, I suppose some of the basic examples that everybody should always consider is time zones. If you're working across time zones, you have to consider the person on the other side of your conversation. So whether it's a partner or a client, for example, I know many people reach me and they say, hey, I'd love to talk to you. And then they give me this time, which is the middle of my night. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, but it's 1 o'clock in the morning. And they don't even consider the fact that, it's convenient for them, but it's not necessarily convenient for me. And the same goes for, people who do online courses or webinars. It's not always convenient for everybody to attend those events live. And then we have things like languages. Languages, I suppose, is something that everybody is aware of, right? Because if you don't understand what it says, well, you're most likely to get away from it. That's what many, and yeah.
I was going to say, language is one of the barriers, and that's more obvious. But one of the areas that I think is less obvious that I've witnessed is the difference in culture, and that when people go into a business with someone who's not of his culture, the deals fall apart because of that, because they simply don't understand each other.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. And it's funny, the reason why I started talking about languages is because most people will think that, language will be a barrier. And that will be about it. They will think that if they go elsewhere, the only problem that there will be is the language. And that's absolutely not true. And we know that there is a significant cultural barrier between, let's say, only the English-speaking countries, between Britain and the United States and Australia. The cultural gap could be, for some people, for some circumstances, for some businesses, could be bigger than, say, between the countries that speak completely different languages. Absolutely. Culture is much more than a language. It's a combination of our habits, of our history, of food, of drink, of weather, of climate, the way that we behave, the way that we interact. So the list can go on forever.
I think you see with very big companies, major international companies like Coca-Cola or Procter & Gamble, that are able to work in literally dozens, if not over 100 different countries. They have whole teams of people that are in these other countries. If someone's a smaller business, how can a small business handle that kind of cultural problem?
Well, first of all, do your research. This is the very first and the basic step that every person who is either wanting to start a business abroad or even just go abroad on holiday. Think of it as going on holiday. When you go on holiday, you don't just go and buy your package, your flight. You will do research of the place where you're going, right? You would want to find out what the currency is like, what the weather is like, what you want to go to see. It will be the same here. The only thing is that you will be researching the cultural attitude, the way that people will be doing business, the way that people will perceive your cultural background. This is crucially important depending on the place, of where you come from and where you go, of course. And then, of course, if you can, then I would advise you to hire somebody like myself who will help you even further to make sure that you don't, make a fool of yourself when you go abroad, and also that all your negotiations and your contracts, go smoothly.
Mm-hmm. We are speaking with Katya Barry, who's an international business coach. Now, here on the Goldstein on Gelt show, we've spoken to people in many aspects of business, but she really specializes on people who are opening or operating businesses cross-border. Now, it's interesting because I do that too, and my day job is that I'm an investment advisor. I only talk to people on the radio once a week, but I sit in Israel and I work mostly with people who live either in Israel or outside the United States, but they want to have a U.S. brokerage account. They want U.S. investments. And what I've discovered is that with my U.S. background as a U.S. licensed advisor, I'm pretty much working in the United States. That's how I feel, as if I've almost never left my old country, but I'm helping on an international level. Is it possible, do you think, when people move from one country to another to not actually have to live in their new country, but maintain their business in their old country and culture?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't think so. I mean, it does happen. You are a prime example of that. Absolutely. It all depends. It all depends on your knowledge, on your expertise, on how far you want to go, and how much of both cultures do you know. I know many expats, right? Those people who go to live away from their home country in some other country for, well, it could be any period of time really, who choose to let go of their native cultural background, and they really fall in love with their local cultural background and they settle down there well. However, on the other side, there are lots of people who choose not to let go of their native cultural background and their connections with home and their former businesses and employers and so on, and they really kind of do businesses on both sides. And I think that's great. I think if you have such opportunity, I think you should try to do both, because for me personally, it's just so much more fun.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you have to enjoy the work that you're doing. One of the ways that, or problems actually I've seen for Americans who expatriate, who are no longer living in the United States, is that they're tied to the U.S. because of the taxes. The United States continues to tax its citizens no matter how long they've been out of the country. In fact, we just came out with a book about it called The Expatriate's Guide to Handling Money and Taxes, specifically designed for Americans who can't get away from the old country. How do you deal with people when they're, or help companies or upstart companies to deal with multiple taxation?
Good question. I'll have to tell you straight away that I'm not much of an expert in this particular field. But yes, when it comes to Americans, it's a completely different story. I know many American friends who live here with me, and they just bite their elbows every time when they have to file their taxes, and they can't believe that they have to do it twice. It's just not fair, is it? Well, you have to be really organized, and you have to be very careful. And again, it's one of the things that you have to research before you go, and also when you arrive in the country. And one of the recommendations that I always give to my clients is that whenever possible, try to get some sort of help in the new country that you're going to, whether it's maybe like a virtual assistant or a personal assistant, or maybe like a tax person. For example, here in Germany, everybody has a taxman. Because it's just the filling out tax returns is so complicated, and especially if you have a private business. Absolutely, oh, exactly. Especially if you have a business, it just, oh gosh, it's like rocket science, It's so much easier than just to hire a professional and help you out there and make sure that you're completely sorted. And I know that here in Germany, We have tax people who specialize, for example, in American or Irish or British tax. So it's
That's very
ideal for those
important, right?
people. That's ideal for those people who have to file their returns twice, because then you can just go to this person and they can do it all for you in one bundle. And I think it's a fantastic service.
As a business advisor, though, you don't only recommend outsourcing taxes. Don't you talk to your clients a lot about focusing on their main business and outsourcing everything else?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, talking about taxes is probably my smallest priority, I suppose. We don't tend to talk about this as much, because usually people, once they get it sorted once, then they know what to do about this. But yes, as far as running international business, I'm a huge supporter of outsourcing as much as possible, because that frees up your time, that frees up your expertise. You can do what you like, what you want, what you actually get paid for. And of course, for many of us, for international entrepreneurs, we travel. And that is often the case why we choose to do what we do, because we can pack it up with us and go whenever we like. And having a team around the world is just, it hasn't been, I think nowadays, it hasn't been easier than in any other day before to establish an international team.
Mm-hmm. So we're getting close to the end of our time, but I just want you to tell me, what would someone do who starts a business? At what point would he say, something, it's time that I get some advice? Because a lot of businesses start small in one room, and then all of a sudden they get big, and they don't know when they actually need help.
I would say, I'll be very bold here, and I'd say start as soon as possible. If you're smart enough and if you're aware of the situation, that you should get in consultation for whatever, any type of a thing, but particularly for international business, for expanding abroad. If you think that there could be something that you would be thinking about in the future, expanding overseas, then do it straight away. Getting an advice often doesn't really cost you very much or cost you very little, but at least you know where you stand. However, if you haven't done it straight away, then just do it today, do it tomorrow, do it as soon as you can, because the information that a coach, a consultant, a mentor, however it is that you're going to approach, is going to share with you is probably going to be groundbreaking for you anyway.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We have been talking with Katya Barry, who's an international business coach. Katya, in the last few seconds, just tell me, how can people find you or follow your work?
Yes, please go to my website. That's katyabarry.com. That's KatyaBarry. And you can also find me on Facebook under Katya Barry and Twitter under Katya Barry.
Okay. Katya Barry, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt show.